araw naman po, ito na naman isang programa dito sa ating palatuntunan Toti Speaks. Ika-10 ng buwan ng Hunyo, 20,2021, araw ng Huwebes, at pinagpapatuloy natin itong pangalawang bahagi nitong ating episode, Paraan, Paano Labanan itong Medical Martial Law. Kung nakaligtaan niyo yung nakaraang araw ng Sabado, ay nakapanayan po natin ang walang iba kundi si Nick Perlas, ang siyang mismong editor patungkol nga dito sa guidebook against COVID-19, and at ganoon din ang isang marunong na ating tagapagtanggol, isang abogado na nag-aral po ng doctorate in judiciary, jurisprudence, walang iba kundi si Atty. Dr. Robert Posadas, na sa kasalukuyan ay nasa San Diego, California. Kung ibabalik po natin ang ating tinalakay noong nakaraang Sabado, ito po yung ating naipaghandang summary, recap. Ang ating tanong ito ba ay pandemya o epidemya? Dahil kailangan natin natugunin kung itong nararanasan natin sa ating lipunan o sa ating pamalaan ay isang matinding pandamay ng ating mga mamayan. At ito po ay naibahagi sa atin ng ating manunuri, at siya po ay naliksik ni patungkol nga dito, at tayo po ay nagkaroon ng pagkakataon maliwanawagan patungkol nga dito. Next slide. Ayon po dito sa ating nasaliksikan, dito sa ating pagre-research, ang epidemic ay binabahagi sa inuugnay siya sa isang outbreak of a disease that spreads quickly and affects many individuals at the same time. Yan po ang epidemic. Maraming nahahawaan, yan nga po ito. Ang pandemic naman po, ayon dito sa ating nasaliksikan, ay isang bahagi ng epidemic, isang bagay na epidemic, one with a greater range and coverage, mas malawak ang kanyang sinasakupan, in an outbreak of a disease that occurs over a wide geographic area and affects an exceptionally high proportion of the population. Alinsunod dito sa mga dinamaan ng mga kahawaan itong coronavirus 19, di lang dito sa bansang Pilipinas, kundi sa buong daigdig. At ito po ay diniklara ng World Health Organization na isa pong pandemya. So while a pandemic may be characterized as a type of epidemic, you would not say that an epidemic is a type of pandemic. So talagang ang unang muna epidemya bago ideklara ng pandemya. Ito po yung makikita mo, ito na nagsasalubong ang pandemic sa epidemic, dahil nga ang pinag-uugat nitong pandemya ay ang epidemya. At sa mga maraming nahawaan, nagdiligin deklara na isa siyang pandemic na mailalagay tayo sa ilalim ng isang mga patakaran na alinsunod sa pinapahayag ng mga otoridad o mga pangyarihan dito sa paksa ng paano pugsuin itong pagkalat nitong karamdaman o itong sakit na ito, itong virus. Dito naman sa novel coronavirus o kaya yung COVID-19, na sinasabi ng ilang mga organisasyon at mga scientists na nagrekomenda na natawagan ang coronavirus a pandemic bago pa naman ang diniklara ng WHO ito. Ayon dito na it is worth noting, however, that there is no clear line distinguishing an epidemic from a pandemic. The latter is from a public health perspective, worse than the former. Ibig sabihin, yung pangalawa, yung pandemya, ay pananaw lang po ng public health. Katulad ng ating kagawaran dito sa ating bansa, ang kagawaran ng kalusugan or Department of Health, sila po ang nag-distinguish o sila po ay mismong nag-deklara na itong karamdaman nito ay either epidemic, katulad ng kalat lang ng malaria o dengue sa ibang lugar, o pandemya sa buong kalahatan ng bansang Pilipinas. But there is sufficient overlap between the two at that a certain point consensus is unlikely. Fortunately, the coronavirus spread now to such a global extent and with such severity that we appear to have moved past the point of semantic ambiguity and the disease has taken on a pandemic proportions. Kasi nga, buong daigdig nga, lahat ng mga pahayagan, wala na silang tinitigan ng pag-uulat kundi itong COVID-19, itong mga gamutan, itong mga namamatayan, itong mga nawaan, at yung mga ibang mga variants, at ganoon din yung pagbabakuna. Pero nung piliwanag nga ni Nick Perlas, sabi daw niya, dito sa graph na ito, makikita mo na hindi ko lang masyado mabasa at medyo malayo ng konti. Pero dito nakikita natin na yung ating tama nito ay hindi kasing taas. Na masasabi mo mataas na pumapalo ng mga ilang libo. Ito pala ay kamakailan pa lang na nagkaroon na dito sa bahagya na ito nang nagpapakita na ilang mga bansa nito sa paligid natin na malaki ang epekto ng pandemya. Dito makita mo na yung araw-araw ng karamdaman ng COVID-19 mula nung Pebrero hanggang sa itong kamakailan, itong ikalima ng Hunyo, bago pa lang, mga 5 araw pa lang nakaraan, na sa bansang Malaysia, sa bansang Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia, makikita po natin dito sa graph na to na talagang pumapalo siya. No? Nang bigla na lang bumulusok pataas. Pero ganoon din, yung panahon na yan, yung nakita natin slide kanina, yung previous slide, pakibalik po natin yung dating slide. Yan po nagpapakita dito, ilan na nagpapakuna. No? Ilan nagpapakuna. Kaya nga, kung kailan lang karoon ng pabakuna, next slide please, bigla na lang bumulusok. Kaya nga, marami mga haka-haka nagsasabi na ang pagtaas nga nito, pagsipa nito ng paghahawa ay dulot ng pagkakalat ng pagbabakuna. Hindi lang kasi merong bagong variant yan. Talagang marami mga talubhasa dito sa ating hanay ng virology at immunology na itong bakuna binibigay sa ating mga mamamayan at ganoon sa buong daigdig ay may laman na virus. At yung virus na so, paghihina daw ng ating katawan at paghihina ng ating depensa. Kaya nga, dahil mahina nga ating immune systems, lalo madali tayong hawaan. Kaya nga, makikita mo dito, biglang bumulusok. Next slide, please. Ito naman po, nagpapakita yung mga pabakuna sa ibang lugar, gaya ng sa Middle East. At makita mo na matataas, ito mga pangunahing mga ekonomiya sa bansa na ito, medyo mataas. Next slide, please. Kaya nga dito sa bansang Taiwan, sa bansang Mongolia, Sri Lanka, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, dahil nga may kakayanan sila bumili ng bakuna, sila rin po ay bila na rin nakapansin sila ng pagkabulusok. Pero nakakapagtaka dito, next slide please. Ito namang graph na to, sa mga pangunahing bansa katulad ng Estados Unidos, sa Amerika, sa Japan, at ganyan-ganyan ibang mga pangunahing bansa, sila mismo magaganda, mataas bigla ang kanilang pagbabakuna sa ilang buwan pa lang. Siyempre, kasi nga sa kanilang bansa nang galing itong mga bakuna. Sino man ang mag-epekto nito? Next slide. Yung mga kaso ng COVID-19 sa lugar ng Seychelles, Maldives, Bahrain, Mongolia, Israel, United Kingdom, sa mga yan, makita mo din sa bansang Seychelles, Maldives, and Bahrain, and Mongolia, sumipa bigla. Pero, next slide. Pero sa Israel, sa UK, sa United States, bumaba. Pumalo ng mataas minsan at bumaba bigla. Bakit kaya ganito ito? Anong dahilan? Ibaba ang kanilang klaseng bakuna na tanggap dito sa mga bansang ito, sa Israel, sa UK, sa US, saka sa United Arab Emirates, kumpara sa balik po. Dito sa Seychelles, Maldives, Bahrain, and Mongolia. Yan ang tanong lang po, no? Kasi nga dapat ipaliwanag nga eh. Yung bang parehas ba itong naiiba? Kasi may mga haka-haka nagsasabi na ang mga Illuminati, mga globalists, yung mga kabal na gustong bawasan ng ating populasyon, tila ang gusto nilang mabawasan itong mga mahihinang bansa na gusto nilang exploit itong mga pangunahing mga bansa katulad ng United Kingdom, United States of America, probably even Israel. I'm not sure. I'm just saying na meron possibility, and this has to be subject for further scrutiny, further discussion. Next slide. Ito naman, isa pang naibahagi sa atin ni Nick Perlas nakaraang linggo, no? Na ang karamihan ng mga namamatay sa pneumonia ay pumapalo ng mga, on the average from 2010 to 2019, 2018, at the rate of about 50 to 70,000 per year. Hindi katulad ng nakaraang taon, 10,000 lang po ang namatay sa COVID. Samantalang dito sa pneumonia, halos taon-taon, pumapalo na pero hindi naman daw pandemic yan, hindi naman epidemic, talagang natural daw na may maraming namamatay sa ganyan. Normal. Next slide, please. Ito naman, nakalagay dito, the third most likely cause of death is pneumonia and influenza. Influenza and pumapalo po siya pangatlo ayon dito sa nakuha nating chart na ito. No? Kaya nga, tinutukoy natin, talaga ba ito bang COVID-19 ay talagang pandemya, epidemya, o talagang ordinaryong karamdaman lamang na bago lang katulad ng SARS o katulad lang ng mga H2N2, yung mga sinasabi lang, mga MERS, mga Middle East, at iba-iba mga bagong klase mga virus. Dito, ayon dito sa Department of Health, yung tungkol sa ulat nila sa influenza and SARS, it's a monthly surveillance report of number 6. Tingnan ito, next slide. May pirmado na po ng mga kanilang mga otoridad dito sa kanilang tanggapan. Next slide. Itong karamdaman ng influenza at ayan kikita niyo yung may kataasan, yung influenza line number. So, nasa na tayo dito? Ito yung sa loob ng isang taon, nung January 1 to June of 2019, bago pa kumakalat ang COVID-19. At ang numero tinitingnan natin sa buong taon ay pumapalo sa halos mahigit mga 40,000 sa loob ng isang taon. Hindi lang talaga ibig sabihin yan, biro mo dito nga, yung dilaw na ng linya nakita mo, halos na hindi na bumababa sa 3,000. Pero bumaba na sa bandang taglamig na ng panahon. Pero sa unang siklo, unang sipol pala ng buwan, yan mataas nga, sabay dahan-dahan bumababa. Next slide please. Ito naman, nakakapagtaka, no? Yung makikita mo yung chart, yung comparison ng pneumonia ay nasa taas. No? Itong makita mo dito, yung sa Pilipinas, yung taon, yung pula po is 2019, yung asul is 2020. Yung pneumonia biglang bumaba ng kalahati sa taon ng 2020. Samantala, yung isa dong linya, COVID that is not yet determined, na medyo bahagyang konti pa lang. At doon sa baba na cause of death, nasa mababa pa siya. No? Dahil wala siyang statistika noong 2019. Pero mukhang hindi ba yung namatayan dahil nga sa pneumonia, inilagay doon sa itong nakalagay doon pang-6 o pang-7 na COVID-19. Kaya po, pag-aralan niyo po yung chart na yan. Nagpapakita po na mukhang dinudoktor ang ating kagawaran ng kalusugan. Ito ebidensya po ito ha. Hindi ko po ito ginawa lang ito. Ito yung nakuha ko lang ito sa internet at nahanap lang po natin ito. Kaya nga, binabalikan po natin ito para magkaroon tayo ng sapat na ebidensya. Nalalabanan natin itong nagdideklara ng medical martial law sa ating bansa. Next. At sinasabi daw niya that itong Sentinel, nung nakaraang taon, na ang pneumonia death still exceeds COVID death. Ito ay sa Amerika. Hindi ito gawa-gawa dito sa Pilipinas, kundi pati rin sa Amerika, mismo sila, nakita nila na ang pneumonia ay mataas pa rin kaysa COVID deaths. Yan, pinapakita yung ibang bansa, ang mga namatayan, nung buwan ng Pebrero, ika-1 hanggang ika-25 ng Setyembre, ang mga namatay sa pneumonia ay pumapalo ng 1,200 sa Kansas. Pakita mo sa numero na to Sa COVID, mababa pa. Yung influenza, medyo mas mababa pa kaysa COVID. Pero pneumonia, nangunguna sa Kansas, sa Missouri, sa Nebraska, sa Oklahoma, by state. And then per million, pataas din ang pneumonia. No? Pumapangalawa lang ang COVID at pumapangatlo lang ang influenza. Kasi nga, ang sintomas ng pagkatawang pagkapasyente na namatayan, ang kanyang pagbabasa ng kanyang dahil nanghihirap sa paghinga ay naipagbibintang sa pneumonia at ganoon din sa kanilang pagsipon o pag-uubo sa influenza naman yun. Ganoon nga ang yung katangian ng mga nahawa sa COVID-19. Hindi ako doktor, pero sa ating mga nalalaman na ngayon, kung ako'y ordinaryong tao, naintindihan ko na ito. Siguro naman kahit sinong mga ordinaryong mamamayan sa buong daigdig, no? Hindi naman kailangan Pilipino sa buong daigdig, ay maintindihan niya na sa paninikip ng dibdib, mapagsisisihan yan either sa pneumonia or respiratory system, yung ating baga, o di kaya influenza dito sa ating linunod, sa ating throat, no? Yung sipon o pag-ubo. Kaya nga, dito sa NCR, itong isang taon nakaraan, January to December 2020, as of February 26, 2021, the highest death rate was in NCR with a total of 12,582, with Quezon City, City of Manila, and the City of Pasig as the highest ranking. Bumababa na sa bandang lugar ng Makati, Caloocan. Ang pinamababa dito ay ang lugar ng Pateros, ba yan? O, City of San Juan, mabababa pa. Noong nakaraang taon, na pumalo tayo ng total na namatay, na deklara. Hindi natin alam kung talagang deklarado siyang talagang COVID ang kinamatayan o baka sinama rin din pati pneumonia. Ayon nga sa mga nakaraang graphs, nakita po natin pati yung mga pneumonia sinasama ka sa COVID. Next slide, please. At dahil dito nga, makita mo nga, ang buong NCR, ang pinakamataas samantala sa ibang lugar, wala naman. Mababa talaga. No? Ito ay by region to. No? The number of registered deaths due to COVID-19 by region of usual residents for the year of 2020 as of 2020. Mataas talaga ang NCR pero ibang lugar mababa. Yan na nga tinutukoy ni Nick Perlas sa nakaraang linggo na meron tayong local government code na kailangan nga hanggang 6 na buwan lang dapat ang pagbibigay ng epidemya. Next slide please. Ayun nga dito sa Republic Act 7160 under the Title 5 of Local Health Boards, Local Government Code, Section 105 says, direct national supervision, dahil naka-decentralized tayo, and control by the Secretary of Health in cases of epidemics, pestilence, and other widespread public health dangers, the Secretary of Health may, upon the direction of the President and in consultation with the local government unit concerned, temporarily assume direct supervision and control. Temporarily, assume direct supervision and control over health operations in any local government unit for the duration of the emergency, but in no case exceeding a cumulative period of 6 months. E ngayon, mahigit isang taon na tayo, isang taon at kalahati na ang pinapalo nito. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin nagdedeklara itong Department of Health. At yun din ang ating, at sila mga mismo nagdidikta, kaya nga martial law na nga po ito. Ayaw lang nilang aminin. Ito nga, sabi na, with the concurrence of the local government unit concerned, the period for such direct national control and supervision may be further expanded with concurrence. Eh kung ayaw ng local government unit, kita rin sa dating chart, balik natin dating chart. Mababa na nga sa ibang rehiyon. Okay, ang kikita mo yan, Eastern Visayas, mababa. Oh? Caraga, mababa. Yan yung mga bababa na yan. Bakit sila hanggang ngayon nakalagay sila sa hindi kailangan, ang NCR lang ang kailangan. At sila yung Calabar Zone at yung Central Zone. Yan lang ang dapat na ilalagay. The rest should be open. Kaya pwede tayong malayang gumala sa mga lugar. Wala nang kailangan ng mga checkpoint. Slide please. First slide. Ito naman, ayon sa interpretation under Republic Act 7160 Local Government Code, sabi nga ni Nick, na in terms of interpretation, the provision of this code, the following rules shall apply. Any provision on a power of a local government unit shall be liberal interpreted in its favor, sa favor ng local. And in case of doubt, any question thereon shall be resolved in favor of the devolution of the powers and of the lower local government unit. Any fair and reasonable doubt as to the existence of the power shall be interpreted in favor of the local government concerned. So may karapatan ng LGU na hindi tanggapin itong mga dikta. Next slide. And the general welfare and provision of this code shall be liberally interpreted to give more powers to the local government units, accelerating economic development and upgrading the quality of life for the people of the community. Marami sa ating mga kayanayunan, sa ating mga lalawigan, na walang negosyo kasi nga nagsarado na. Lalo na yung turismo. Malaki ang epekto niya sa turismo. And then yung isa pa itong interpretation under the provisional law, in the resolution of controversies arising under this code, where no legal provision or jurisprudence applies, resort may be had to the customs and traditions in the place where the controversies take place. Ibig sabihin yan, kung meron kayong paraan, paggamot, dapat kikilanin, kagunin sa pabuna, antiviral injection, sa Pangasinan. Kung doon sa lugar nila, tinatanggap nila yun, hindi dapat pinagbawalan yun. Ganun ang ibig sabihin ito sa subparagraph E ng Section 5 ng Local Government Code. Next slide, please. Ito na nga ang mga vital statistics, mga parang 1.4 million, ilan ang mga Yan ay nakalagay na sa Department of Philippine Statistics Authority. So dito nakikita yung dami. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa rin ganun kadami ang namamatayan. So nakahawaan, ewan nga natin kung nahawaan talaga yan. Then meron ditong suspecha dito kahit dumating yung PC, rapid test, RT-PCR. Rapid test, hindi pala effective. Marami mga dalubhasa na sabi hindi dapat ginagamit yung RT-PCR pub test. Pero natapos tayo dito sa ating talakayan ng nakaraang linggo, sabi ni Nick, may mga 30 provisions violate ng itong ating tanggapan ng Pangulo ng itong Interagency Task Force. Alamin po natin ito sa araw na ito. Dalawang bahagi. Itong ating paksa patungkol sa Paraan Panlaban sa Medical Martial Law. At mababalik po natin ang ating mga magigiting na eksperto. Walang iba po kundi si Nick Perlas at yun din po si Atty. Robert Posadas. Magandang araw po sa inyong dalawa. Okay, Nick, can you elaborate now? Can we proceed with the 30 provisions in the unless you have anything else to add, Nick?
Yes, thanks Toti. Gusto ko lang dagdagan yung mga previous comment mo sa presentation just to technically clarify. There are 3 categories of diseases: endemic, epidemic, pandemic.
Okay.
So in general, okay yung nasabi mo sa epidemic. Epidemic is usually used in a country, ang pandemic is global. Tapos ang endemic is the continued existence, patuloy na pag-exist ng virus sa community. For example, flu is endemic. Nandiyan na yan. So that's what will happen in COVID-19 virus in the end. Magiging endemic yan. No government decree can actually stop a virus. Imposible. So it will become endemic. So I guess yun ang first point, no? Tapos yung parang mga mataas na infection rate in countries na gaya ng Pilipinas is actually a result of the RT-PCR test, yung sinasabi natin. Kasi masyadong mataas yung ginagamit ng DOH. Mali actually. Madaming false positive doon. So pag false positive ka, you're not necessarily infected. And ito yung pagkamali ng DOH data. Ang nirelease nila sa newspaper ay mga false positive which they interpret as cases, real infections. Mali yun. That's why ang daming recoveries. Recovered tayo, madami. 95%, 96%, and so on from the test cases. Kasi these are not actual infections. Now, if one of your charts showed na bumababa after vaccination, parang bumababa yung cases of infection sa advanced countries. Nang daya rito, Toti, ang CDC. Ang ginawa nila, binabaan nila yung cycle threshold ng RT-PCR test nila from 38 to 45, which will give you mostly false positive. Binabaan nila sa 28. So, ang nangyari, mas konting na-identify na false, na naging bumaba yung false positive. But ang nangyari is that ang infection rate sa mga bansa na na-vaccinate, nag-actually increase yung presence ng COVID because the COVID vaccines do not stop infection, but they can give you the virus. Tapos, worse pa doon, they all contain, isasabi natin na spike protein, which is even more dangerous than the original virus. Yung spike protein na yun, that's causing a lot of deaths. And as of now, may mga 1 million deaths ng mundo and 15 million ang adverse impacts nitong vaccine. So it's an illusion, gumagawa sa ng illusion. Binago ng CDC yung definition ng cycle threshold sa 28 instead of 38 to 45. So parang bumagsak 70 to 75% yung bagsak ng infection rate sa ibang bansa, but that's not actually, the message there is actually wrong. The vaccinations are dangerous, they're causing deaths, and they're causing infections kasi that it contains actually the virus.
Tama.
So, yun lang, I think this I wanted to, so I wanted to comment on. But you're also still correct na the kind of behavior of CDC, konektado yan to a larger global agenda. And dito na nahuli si Fauci. With all the emails of Fauci, klarong-klaro yan ang ginawa nila dito sa planned pandemic. That's why sinasabi ko na scamdemic itong inaharap natin, because maybe in the future segments, I can show you a chart which shows the interconnection of all the fraud sa WHO, fraud sa CDC, fraud sa mga scientific publications, and so on. But this is not our topic, hindi ko na pupuntahan muna doon. And finally, before I make a comment, I just wanted to say, maganda yung pinakita mo sa region, yung chart mo, yung last chart mo of regional deaths. And you can really see clearly, walang nangyayari sa ibang bansa, ibang portion ng Pilipinas. Karamihan sa NCR, and then sa NCR na yan, ang daming bloated deaths. Kasi maski ano ng klaseng patay mo, pag false positive ka, bibilangin niya ng COVID.
Okay.
That's why, yun. Okay. So ngayon, I just want to go now to the, actually mga 38 provisions ng Constitution ang nababiolate. And just tell me when to stop, Toti, kasi mahaba ito.
Yeah.
Ang first is the Article 2, Declaration of Principles and State Policies and Principles. Okay, number 1, Section 4. The prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. Ang problema rito, they're not doing that, they're doing the opposite with the lockdown, tapos nag-a-appeal sila sa fear. The psychology studying this thing, may tinatawag silang fear appeal. So in other words, tinatakot mo yung mga tao para in the end, utu-utu na lang. Susundin ka lang para they feel that they're safer. Pero in reality, wala tayong pandemya. We have a scamdemic. So yung mga lockdowns na yan, it doesn't serve to protect the people. In fact, it's actually abusing the people. So Section 5, the maintenance of peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, and property, promotion of the general welfare are essential to the enjoyment by all people and blessings of the democracy. So ang problema, lahat ng mga lockdown, mga social distancing, face mask, and all the other attributes of the lockdown has no scientific basis. All of these are scientifically doubtful. Walang kwan, especially sa mask, for example, masyado malaki. But instead, ang ginawa nila, dinisrupt nila ng normal lives natin bilang mga Pilipino, and nagsasubstitute sila ng tinatawag na new normal, a language they're borrowing from abroad. That new normal, hindi klaro kung ano yon, leaving people and destroying small businesses in the process. So, wala nang welfare ng tao dyan sa may ganun. Tapos, increase pa yung mga poverty. Section 6, separation of church and state shall be inviolable. So, dito, klaro, naghihingi pa ng mga permission yung mga simbahan upang makadasal sila sa simbahan. Mali yun. That's interference with the state in the church. Ang matindi pa rito, Toti, there's means to say, even during, kung may tunay mga tayo na emergency, sa simbahan na yun, that's their own decision. Hindi na pwedeng pigilan ang simbahan na magsira. Because if people want to pray there, want to gather, that's the judgment of the religious orders.
Right.
Section 6 yun. Yes. Tapos ito yung matindi. The state shall, Section 9, The state shall promote a just and dynamic social order that will ensure the prosperity and independence of the nation, free the people from poverty through policies that provide social services, promote full employment, a rising standard of living, and an improved quality of life for all. Now, the lockdowns have destroyed over 2.2 million jobs. NEDA data ito, they've created, plunged and several millions more into poverty, additional numbers, and so on. So, ang premise ng sinasabi ko dito, Toti, was what we discussed last time. They can only declare a national health emergency if they prove that yung virus na yun is not only infectious but also deadly. Pero hindi, both are not, is problematic. It's actually not there. Tapos at the same time, makikita natin later on, meron tayong ivermectin. And ang ivermectin actually sa hearing, kahapon lang sa hearing, Duque was there. So I was there sa congressional hearing. He actually approved the use of ivermectin. Na-pressure siya talaga by medical doctors. So victory yun. It's now the real function of the medical doctor with the client. Bahala ng doctor kung gusto niya magkuhan ng ivermectin. So that's a huge victory.
Kahapon yan sa hearing, Nick?
Yes, kahapon lang to. Maybe mga 4:20, 4:30. Yeah, he agreed. So, dati pinipigilan niya pero during the debate, wala talaga. It's no reason. Dr. Robert, may sinasabi silang equipoise. May legal principle na equipoise. So in other words, if one thing is indeterminate, one or the other, the rational thing to do is just to allow the thing to happen and see what goes on. Kasi yung mga Philippine Medical Association sa Pilipinas, madami yan, wala silang proof na masama ang ivermectin. They have no proof. On the other hand, on the ivermectin side, masyadong marami ang proof na
positive.
Basically, it's positive. May mga meta-studies dito, ang dami na, and there are involving like 400 scientists all over the world and thousands of people. Claro. And these things are happening in a wide scale sa Mexico City. I mean, dozens of countries are using ivermectin. So walang national health emergency because the virus is relatively harmless. Hindi siya matindi. At the same time, may mga alternative. So because of that, all these things that I'm reading ngayon dito sa Constitution, nababiolate because of the lockdown na hindi necessary, the face mask or the distancing and so on. Ayun. So yun ang Section 9 na violated by all the economic losses natin. It's sad to, kakagaling ko lang sa Metro Manila kahapon, ang dami nagsisira. Yung dating bukas pa, sirado na. They're really destroying the middle class. And technically, if that's part of the globalist agenda, a middle class, they want to really want to destroy that. Kasi that's usually the independent source of thinking, independent source of freedom, and all of this stuff. That's usually mga intellectuals ang gagaling niya sa middle class. So the state, Section 10, the state shall promote social justice in all phases of national development. So dito clearly, it's being violated. Kasi this is not justice that we're having. Maglalakad ka lang doon na sa loob ka ng kotse, tapos nagda-drive ka, wala kang mask, and you're alone in the car, uhulihin ka ng police. The police has no right. You cannot coerce a human being inside his own car to put a mask. Sino ma-infect niya doon kung may infection man? Wala. That's totally unreasonable. So, walang social justice done na nangyayari. Tapos, number 11, the state values the dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect of human rights. Ito, ang mass vaccinations violate this section. It is the right ng lahat ng Pilipino to have informed consent, especially since these vaccines are not proven to be safe. In fact, they're very dangerous. Delikado po ito na papatayin kayo nito. Ngunit hindi sinasabi kung ano talaga ang tunay na mga content itong vaccines nito. Walang informed consent. Tapos on top of that, magla-lottery sila, parang kunyari, pa-injection ka, may lottery ng baka, may lottery ng house and lot, may lottery ng ganito sa restaurant. Sa US, masyadong desperate na. They have all kinds of so-called incentive. Pero yung coercion of people na hindi ka pwedeng pumasok sa trabaho mo pag hindi ka nagpa-vaccinate, that's a total violation not only of our Constitution, this section, walang respeto sa human rights. That is a direct violation of the first provision of the Nuremberg Code, that the state cannot do experiments on human beings without their consent. Diba? So, ito nangyayari, ang buong Pilipinas na binabakuna, they've become reduced to lab animals. Parang yung rights natin are taken away, so laboratory animals na lang tayo for a vaccine that's totally unproven. In fact, even Pfizer is saying, and all the other vaccines, this will not stop infection, this will not stop transmission, this will not stop lockdowns, this masking will continue. So ano ito? Pera lang ito para sa pharmaceutical companies. Tapos ngayon, gusto pa nila magpabakuna sa mga bata. My God, the first Pfizer hid 85% ng mga test nila sa mga bata harmful, ages 12 to 17. Ito ngayon ang gustong gawin ng Kwan. This is total disregard and disrespect sa human rights na mga Kwan natin. Our right to actually do what we want with our own body. Kasama yan. It's a part of our human rights. Tapos ito yung sa medyo grabe. Section 12. The state recognizes the sanctity of family life and shall protect and strengthen the family as a basic autonomous social institution. The natural and primary right and duty of parents in rearing the young for civic efficiency and the development of moral character shall receive the support of the government. Itong provision ng Section 12, Article 2 ng Constitution natin is one of the most violated by this government. Imagine, shut down yung schools for no reason na mga kabataan is way below even flu. They're not, hindi sila, and they're not super spreaders. Walang evidence, scientific evidence, yet they're not only stopped from education, they're also destroying family life because yung mga parents na may ignorante, pipilitin nila malagay ng mask yung mga bata, which in fact can damage the brain of the child. It will affect the neurological development of the yung utak ng bata when pinapa-face mask mo. So this is that's also destroying this, kasi then on top of that, you are not educating the child to be loving. You're educating the child to be fearful. Takot, fear. This will have, scientists are warning, pediatricians and other scientists are warning, ang impact nito sa bata will last for decades. Long term ito. Matindi. So this Section 12, talagang sinisira yung family, basically, yung education of children. Internal conflict is taking place sa mga families ngayon because of this provision. Tapos dito, one of the sanctity of family life, Toti, yung vaccines, the spike proteins, ito siguro hindi masyado naintindihan ng mga tao. Meron tayong so-called vaccine para sa coronavirus. Hindi na alam, yung spike protein na nandun sa vaccine is worse than the coronavirus. So we have two sources na nagbibigay ng kamatayan. The virus, if you not properly managed, especially for elderly people. Number two, yung spike proteins mismo is a new source. And itong spike proteins, they contain certain compounds that affect the reproductive system. This will terminate mga fertility. There are people that are now suffering bleeding sa mga reproductive organs nila. Semen is being affected, sa mga babae, nag-abortion, automatic, nag-blood clotting. This is a violence. You're actually destroying the family with this vaccine. So number 13, ito, the state recognizes the vital role sa youth, sa nation building, and promote and protect their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, social well-being. It shall inculcate youth patriotism and nationalism and encourage the involvement in public and civic affairs. Ito is definitely violated by the lockdowns because, number one, sinira rin schools. So how can you develop the intellectual, spiritual, moral? Walang education. People are on their own. They're getting the education sa internet. So ang internet is actually not a wholesome source. They can just spend their days there in the internet, especially if they use Facebook, kasi wala na sila ibang magawa. Ang Facebook and other social media were designed for addiction, digital addiction. And then when you're addicted, they're going to start programming your mind. Hindi ito biro. Facebook has 100,000 elements of profile on you. So every time you like something, every time you share something, every time you make a comment there, or every time you write you go to Messenger, lahat ito naka-encode sa profile ng isang tao, and from there, they will use artificial intelligence to basically predict your behavior, para they will know how they will handle you. At the same time, the worst stage is to manipulate your behavior. So ito, hindi alam to ng youth. We are the Facebook capital of the world. The lockdowns have actually intensified their addiction to Facebook. And ito is not actually being developed. So at the same time, nag-i-increase yung calls to depression centers to the emergency calls by there are about 1,000 calls a month now. So it's 3 to 4 calls a day, emergency calls for people seeking help sa depression and so on. Ang suicide rate natin, karamihan sa kabataan, are actually increasing by 26%. There's about 3,000 plus dahil sa lockdown. So this lockdown is destroying jobs, is destroying the family fabric, is destroying our youth and our children. Grabe ito. This is terrible, especially with the fact na walang science dito. Lockdowns are scientifically, there's no evidence that they work. So, ang daming counter evidence, and there's some countries that never locked down, like Sweden, they're doing very well, hindi nag-lockdown. Schools are open, there's no mask, and so on. Walang nangyayari kasi we do not have a pandemic. This is a scamdemic created by false tests. In this connection, Toti, nag-announce na si Rainer Fulmich, yung in charge na lawyer, 1,000 lawyers, 10,000 doctors, magfa-file sila simultaneously huge cases in 3 countries, hindi na binanggit kung saan, but I suspect US, Canada, and Europe, on all the WHO, all the people who are committing this fraud, because sila din. And the beautiful thing, before I continue dito, is that many lawyers who sued for constitutional violation of lockdowns have won the cases based on legal evidence. Wala. And ang key to the entire thing is that they actually scammed the RT-PCR test. Nilagay nila sa 38 to 45. That means to say magkakaroon kayo ng 95% to 100% false positives, no infection. That's what they did around the world. And that scam originated in January sa Germany. That's why this guy, si Christian Dorsten of Germany, is going to be sued for crimes against humanity. Kasi yung kanyang RT-PCR test na yan ang ginagamit ng WHO, and tayo, sunurin lang tayo sa WHO and all over the world. So, yun ang kwan dito. That's why malaking effect nito sa atin.
Okay.
Now,
I will have to hold you here because we're
The state
already
shall
running short of
protect and
time. I think we need another part
Yes.
for this. Ano? So far,
Sure.
what you already brought to our attention
Sure.
is the these lockdowns are so unnecessary, and I'd like to get the comment from
Yes.
Dr. Robert Posadas. Give us a quick view on how will this impact not only nationally but internationally. These authorities that has been subjected to the dictates of a foreign agency to talk about our sovereignty without our own resources, our own experts being consulted upon, not only nationally but even locally, and yet they have abused their authority. Dr. Posadas, would you have any comment, please?
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, before we start with an international view of events, what we'd like to do now is to narrow it down to our Philippine case, because what's happening in the Philippines is quite unique in the sense that it's only in the Philippines again, true to its slogan. So what I am going to make now is a diagram of what I call governance by objective. It's you've heard of management by objective, right? In
Yes.
order to orderly
Yeah.
and step-by-step document and reach a certain objective. In the Philippines, there is a governance by objective, okay, but instead of having a specific objective, it has a shifting objective. So I am establishing a diagram wherein you have parts of the message of what they're trying to do and the medium and their objective. So that is showing right now that in addition to a cumulative violation of the Philippine Constitution, there's also a cumulative violation of their own shifting objectives, in the sense that instead of having a specific aim, a clear, specific endpoint, what's happening now is that instead of the endpoint, what they have now is really an end game. And showing a robotic pattern, and it's making it an agenda is surfacing that we have always been worried of and suspicious about. Again, only the Philippines, because it's quite connected with some contrived plan along with the pandemic. So, so instead of the DOH and IATF governance by objective so far to prevent infection based on data. So with the cumulative data now, it's showing that it's shifting. So you've heard of the saying that we have been taken for a ride because these are data-driven, and they have been taking us for a ride. So it comes to a point, and next time we're going to show an end point, really, that should be accomplished by this governance by objective. So that's what I'm trying to do now, just to give you an overview of what I'm going to do to sort of summarize this administration's or government's plan to prevent infection kuno. So, in other words, if their objective is to prevent infection, and at any point there is no objective to cure, they're just trying to endure up to a point where it's really showing their agenda of just coasting along and build up the numbers or the data for their own agenda. So next time I'm going to clearly send you a text of the diagram, Toti, so we can feature it as I am explaining it for everybody.
Okay. We look forward to that governance by objective. It's a new concept. It's a new term. First time I've heard of that. I'm familiar with the management by objective, but governance by objective, yes, I think there is some essence to that. And we would like to proceed with this, but unfortunately we ran out of time. And this things that you're covering, Nick, it is really an expose, and it's new to a lot of people, especially to our viewers. Now that we've got even over 1,000, or almost 10,000 that has followed through this coverage, and I think it's going to grow further now that the Fauci emails has been exposed. And I think in the subsequent weeks that's coming by, we will monitor this, and we would like to get you back, both of you, Dr. Posadas and Nick, to further discuss what other course of action can the common folks, the people, even our legal minds can take in pursuit of getting back our freedom. And with that much, can we view? Let me read first the feedback from our viewers before I get your last comments. Okay, from Merlin Lawyers, magandang hapon po, Sir Toti, sa lahat, blessed day po, good God bless. Pistado na nga po si Fauci sa Amerika. Sige, OA rin sila dito, Fauci, oh my gosh. Jair Balico, hello sir, Edmundo, Toti, Casiño, mabuhay from Paris. With respect, thank you Jair for watching us from Paris, France. Carlo Iway, good afternoon po. Sana mapuna dito sa PTV4. From Sammy Satur, watching from Caloocan City. From Glen Resurrection, good evening Sir Toti, or good afternoon. I'm watching from the city of Bacoor, Cavite. Stay safe and keep up giving us updates regarding this experimental vaccine that they rolled out now here in our country. God bless. From Alfredo Rindina, present, bakuna para sa baka magkasakit. Daming Pinoy may sakit na at nangangailangan ng chemo, dialysis, insulin at gamot. Uutang para sa bakuna, hindi alam kung ma-COVID. Walang box nakaka-recover. From Edna Cito, mabuhay po kayo. From Tihan Dimalik, gandang hapon Sir Tony, watching from Quezon Province. From Iligan, Isabela, Philippines, good evening sir. From Zenea Arcilia, good evening Sir Tony, always listening here in Hong Kong. God bless you po. From William Laguno, gandang hapon Sir Tony, at sa mga kasama natin dito, tama kayo Sir Tony. Medical martial law na yan. Pero meron pa silang murder na kaso sa mga hawa, masyado ng paranoid. From Angeline Lissing, good evening Sir Toti, listening here in Hong Kong. Buhay po kayo. Sir Toti, itong si Duque, napakakapal na mukha kahit anong supalpal sa kanya sa Kongreso, hindi talaga tabla ng kahiyan. Pareho lang sila ni Beheri. Nagpapalusot pa. From John Cyril Onato, good afternoon Sir Toti. People here in KDP watching from Capiz. Pinagloloko tayo ng DOH at WHO sa kanilang unscientific data. Hindi talaga reliable ang PCR test. At tama kayo dyan, Sir Nick Perlas. Binudol-budol tayo ng mga DOH at WHO sa kanilang PCR test at ayon kay Dr. Rainer Fulmich, dapat kasuhan ang mga yan ng crime against humanity. From Frank G. Enahe, thank you. From Betchay, paano po yung mga kapitan nakakasuhan ni Anyo ng DILG? Kapun nga po ng demonyo ang mga nananahala. Ngayon, baka demonyo na ang pinagagawa. From Loli Lawas, very, very true indeed. From Cesar Azar, ang layunin talaga nila ay bawasan ang ating mamayan. Yan ang utos ng WHO. Sana imbitahin nyo si Governor Gwen. From GC7, epekto ng hostage sila ng cabalers or cabal. From Lingan Lasquero, yes po, true yan. From Angresita Puera, agree. From Alain Paliones, salamat sa mga impormasyon sa inyo mga sir. From Marino Corrales, tama po ang sinasabi ninyo. From Christopher Cruz, present. From Delbert L. Tan, listening from Cagayan de Oro. And more. From Arok Alip, good afternoon, sirs. The longest pandemic lockdowns only in the Philippines, led by the hard-headed people in the government. And from Romel R, these are not vaccine but gene modification weapons. And from Francis Cariaga, magandang hapon po Sir Toti at mga sa dalawang guest mo ngayon. Tama, oras na po para lumaban tayo. Sobra ng gobyernong ito. Bulag, pipi at bingi. Mga robot na ata sila. Right. And that's among the few that we can read so far. No? And I think nagkakaroon na talagang malawakang pagmumulat ang ating mga mamamayan patungkol nito. Lalo na rin sa mga isinawalat mo, Nick, and in this new concept. We're looking forward to that diagram, Dr. Posadas, that you will give us, our viewers. We will have this on the next week, on Thursday again, part 3 of this series, so that the more we can cover, the more we can be able to solidify our viewers on how to take action against these dictates of the government. So we'd like to hear a few remarks with you. Let's start with Dr. Posadas.
Well, as I've said, let's look forward to what I'm making right now, a diagram where it will show a data-driven manipulation to show that there's a shifting objective instead of a specific objective. So instead of an endpoint for a specific objective, what's happening now is it's turning into an end game where they keep just recycling the same procedure and process, and it's a data-driven control that's taking us for a ride. And it will show the cumulative violation of the Constitution at the same time.
If I may ask, Dr. Posadas, would that hold in court as evidence, considering these are not primary but secondary data, when you say data-driven resolutions?
Of course, this is coming from their own, and then we'll just interpret it into a robotic pattern.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Nick Perlas, last remarks to our viewers.
Okay, sige. Thanks, Toti. First of all, gusto ko lang pasalamatan yung mga nanonood dito sa programa mo, Toti. Kasi na-notice ko sa mga comments nila, quite a good number of them are are independent thinkers, and they read kung nagbabasa sila sa mga nangyayari sa mundo. So, makikita ko yan sa mga terms na ginagamit. So, I'm very happy na medyo intelligent yung mga listeners dito at nakikita na nila ito. So that's the first thing. Ang second point ko lang dito, yung violation ng Constitution natin is so massive na hindi pwedeng pabayaan itong magpatuloy. Kaya nangako na ako sa sarili ko, and makikita natin sa action part next week na kakasuhin natin talaga itong government, one way or the other. So nanawagan ako sa mga abogado na nandyan, na kung gusto niyo magsama-sama tayo rito, gaya ng ginagawa ng ibang bansa, 1,000 lawyers, 10,000 doctors, marami na pong doktor nagigising, namumulat, makasama natin sila unti-unti may mga abogado na rin nagigising. Sana mas marami pang mga abogado kasi ang daming potential na kasong pwedeng isamba dito sa mga sa mga abusive government authorities na basically siguro Toti, gusto ko lang bagitin, one of the most obvious things na lumabas doon sa hearings kahapon sa Kongreso where I was invited to be there. Klaro-klaro ng Philippine Institute Infectious Disease and mga societies na ito na nag-a-advise sa DOH, meron agenda na konektado sa pharmaceutical companies. Hindi sila bukas, hindi sila open. Kaya klarong-klaro na napahiya sila doon kahapon. Ang nag-promise sila na bigay nila sa Kongreso yung mga sponsors nila sa events nila, hindi nila nagawa. Yung promise nila hindi nila ginawa. So ang nangyari, binroadcast ng Kongreso mismo yung internal research nila, yung mga support na gagaling sa Pfizer, at iba pang mga company sa mga nag-a-advise sa DOH. That's why bulag yung ating bansa, vaccine at daming namamatay, dapat hintuin. Kasi na ito, walang scientific basis to. And siguro sa next episode, Toti, papakita ko na within lahat na na-vaccinate will have a very strong chance of dying within the next 6 months to 10 years. Dahil sa na-discover nila na yung vaccine pala nagkukos ng mga prion disease or sometimes known as mad cow disease. Ang nagkuha nito ay Nobel Prize winners in Luc Montagnier sa France, experts sa mga virus. Pinagsturian nila, this causes the equivalent of human mad cow disease. Madaming mamamatay dito. Sa mga kaibigan natin, all our networks, huwag na tayong magpapakuna, maski ano pang sabihin nila sa atin.
Okay.
Papaliwanagan ko pa ito, Toti, next episode.
Robert, you
so
say?
this intelligent government officials are no longer thinking they're just like robots. Not only that, they are now riding on a tiger and they cannot get off the tiger because the tiger will eat them. And we may be part of the tiger that's going to stop them decisively, because what they've been doing is already showing not only alleged corrupting intent, but it's showing criminal intent. And that's what's getting worse, because it will lead towards the irreparable damage of destroying the whole Philippines. Short of, we're on the brink of a social cataclysm if this doesn't stop. So we're now really upon us. And it's very heartwarming for your audience, Toti, to say that we are gallant men defending them, because they have nobody else to turn to except maybe depending on what we're doing right now, to see to it that we're going to bring all this out, and in so doing protect and preserve our country from these supposedly intelligent officials.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Posadas, for that point. And I'm sure on behalf of our viewers, we are very grateful that you have given us this new perspective that has been haunting us for the longest time. And it seems that there are no apparent course of action that no matter how we shout, how we raise the highest pitch of our voices, our opposition, our objection to these dictates of the government that is very unreasonable. Now that there's coming more logic and more rational approach in how to challenge this oppressive regime. So with that, we'd like to thank you both, gentlemen, and I'm sure that with our followers, you have new followers on your range. You could consider them as they're new believers in your cause, and they will definitely be on their list as you are their idols, as you are their ones that will be carrying the torch for them. With that, I'd like to thank you very much and magpapaalala po ako sa programa na ito. Abangan niyo po namin yung susunod na kabanata dito sa ating talakay na to sa darating na linggo sa araw ng Huwebes, ika-17 ng Hunyo. At sa tapang oras na rin ganito, abangan niyo po ang susunod na ating programa, ang Sulong sa Pilipinas. Hatid sa inyo ni Ka-RJ Habiliana. Ito po yung lingkod, Toti Casiño, nagpapaalam. Mabuhay po kayo at mabuhay po ang Pilipinas.